Good morning. My name is Mike Ralston. I'm the CEO of Blencowe Resources, code BRES. I'm here to talk about the Orum Cross graphite project that Blencowe owns 100%. It's located in Uganda, and we've got some very interesting and exciting news occurring at the moment. Orum Cross is an extraordinarily large graphite project, some 2 to 3 billion tons, located near to the surface, and it's a project that's going to be in production for a very, very long mine life once it's brought through into production phase. And we're very excited about the progress that's occurring at the moment. And why is it going to be so important? It's because it's leveraged into the fast-growing electric vehicle market, which everyone is aware is something that's growing at an extraordinary pace even today and expected to grow a lot further as we go forward. Let me explain. Currently, this is one of the fastest growing trends worldwide. There were 7.5 million EVs in the world as of December 2019. There were approximately 3.2 million units sold in 2020, so there are over 10 million EVs in the world today. Benchmark Minerals Intelligence have a growth forecast of around 20 to 80 times over the next decade. That is moving from 10 million today to somewhere between 140 million to 600 million EVs by 2030. And it doesn't stop there. It's going to continue to grow and grow. And what makes it so interesting is that every single EV is going to take a lithium-ion battery, and all of those lithium-ion batteries have an anode, and 50% of the makeup in terms of weight of that anode is flake graphite. So it's hugely leveraged. Orum Cross and Blencowe are very, very leveraged into this parabolic growth of EVs, and we're obviously very excited about where that's going. And why is it growing so quickly? There are a couple of drivers there on the slide which basically explain what's going on. On the micro market side, we've got reduction in EV costs. We've got technological development going on. We've got increases in charging stations, and even the auto manufacturers starting to move upstream to be working within the space in terms of battery production, in terms of anode production. On the macro market side, we've got factors such as global warming, of environmental awareness, and the politics and economics that we're all seeing around us. In particular, incredible stimulus spending on infrastructure, which is starting to occur post-COVID. And we're starting to see that infrastructure all around us as we sit here and watch today. Government support and a generational transition. These are all factors that are starting to play together in terms of the EV growth story, and will continue to roll down and continue to create that momentum going forward. I've just been reading recently on a different analytical review by a fund called Paragon, and Paragon are talking about the continuation of this momentum going forward, where there are some 180 battery mega factories that will be in production producing by 2030. That's an enormous increment in terms of what's there today. And if you put it into context, the largest of the lot at this stage is the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada. They are forecasting that they will require 1 million tons of flake graphite just for that one Gigafactory going forward by the end of the decade. So there's and that represents 2.5 times the amount of graphite that was produced and sold last year in the market. So that's one factory out of 180 going forward. So there's an enormous amount of momentum in this direction. And the leverage, as I mentioned before, is all to do with the role that flake graphite plays within the lithium-ion battery, which will power these electric vehicles. Elon Musk has famously said that these batteries should be called nickel graphite instead of lithium-ion, because there's so much nickel and graphite in them. But that's by the by. At the end of the day, as I said, 50% of the weight in a battery, around 40 kilograms in a smaller car, up to 70 kilograms in a larger one, is flake graphite. And at the end of the day, this will have an incredible impact in terms of what's going on in the flake graphite market, and for new producers of flake graphite going forward. So Blencowe owning 100% of one of the largest high quality flake graphite projects in the world in a safe location is very, very leveraged to this EV growth going forward. And we're just starting to see this emerge as we speak. The next slide shows, excuse me, a supply deficit that's starting to occur over the next couple of years, and beyond 2026, 2028, up to 2030, it starts to really broaden in terms of the demand-supply imbalance. Down the bottom of that graph, you're seeing all the projected supply that is in black is what's happening in the market today, and then in green and blue, what BMI are predicting future supply will come from. And as you can see, even with all the projects that are out there, we're talking about supply approximately doubling, potential to go a little bit higher than that if everything comes through. But as we'll discuss later on, it's not all projects that are going to be able to produce the graphite as required for these batteries going forward. So as we see demand supply imbalance occur, this deficit, I think it's highly likely that we're going to see prices increase substantially. And again, that's going to be very, very good for a graphite producer such as Blencowe Resources. This is what's happening in terms of the prices at the moment. There are different types of graphite at the -100 mesh size, down the small fines. That's typically the graphite that's used for the electric vehicles in terms of the batteries. Over the last 3 months, we've seen that grow, those prices increase by about 10%. So we are starting to see prices increase already. But at the jumbo and extra large and large flake size, they are probably 3 to 4 times the price. And where we're sitting in terms of our project at Orum Cross, we expect to have approximately 50% of the large flakes and 50% of the smaller fines, making up both markets in terms of what we're going to sell into. Average weighted price for us, we're targeting around $1,000 per ton for all products sold, and targeting operating costs of around $350. So a large margin, and for us, it's the ability to be able to upscale production going forward to produce as much as will be required into that deficit, as we discussed on the previous slide, in order to take advantage of that, and obviously taking advantage of the higher prices for the larger flake sizes as well. This slide talks about end products and typical applications. There are around 150 different applications for graphite, ranging from anything from pencils and paints and lubrication, and things that people are used to seeing. Obviously, the lithium-ion batteries is getting a lot of attention at the moment. And then across to the jumbo and large flakes, where the properties of graphite, and in particular, its ability as a flame retardant, to be used for thermal sheets, to be used in lining steel foundries, as graphite foils, etc. So there are an enormous number of different applications for graphite, and it's not fair to say that every graphite is going to be used in lithium-ion batteries or anything else. It's going to be spread out across, and we will also be selling into different markets as we go forward. In terms of the corporate overview, I'll touch on this very quickly. Blencowe acquired 100% of the Orom-Cross project in April 2020 and paid for that in shares. We raised £2 million in cash at the same time for project development, and we've raised another £800,000 over the last couple of months in order to continue that development through in 2021. We've got a very tight structure. We've got a very experienced management team, particularly in African resources, and we've got very strong liquidity in terms of what we're trading on the UK market on a day-to-day basis. So around about 9 million market cap. Most of that is the enterprise value. We've got enough cash at the moment to take us through to the next stage, and we'll discuss where we are and what we're doing going forward. Board management, as I mentioned, we've got a good mix in terms of corporate experience, in terms of geological, and in terms of technical experience as well. My own background has been developing these projects for the last 20 odd years, and I've taken projects right from the early stages right through into production. So I understand junior resources. I was born in Africa, and I lived in East Africa for a long time. So I've actually got experience on the ground in terms of these locations. And I believe that Uganda, where we've got our project, is one of the safest locations in Africa to be developing a resource project going forward. We've got very good technical advisors and key management on the technical side as well, which is very important, particularly as we go forward into the feasibility study stage. The project itself is in northeastern Uganda, which is an East African country, English speaking, formerly a British protectorate. It's very accessible by road and ultimately will be by rail. But we envisage mining at surface at Orom-Cross, building a plant there to treat the product and to upscale it into a 95 to 97% concentrate. Perhaps over time, one might be able to consider anode manufacturing and sphericalization in Uganda, but for now, it would just be moving a concentrate through to Mombasa Port, which is going through Kenya. And we will be doing a feasibility study this year, which will be concentrating on that as a mining operation. We think it's going to be very low cost because we're mining at surface. There's not going to be any drilling and blasting. And at the end of the day, having a low cost operation is going to be critical. And I think it's fair to say that we haven't yet completed all of our metallurgy and in terms of met test work. Stage 2 is ongoing. But we do believe that we're going to have an end product that's going to be very, very valuable, and we'll be able to put it into markets both in China and in the developing European market going forward. Some of our milestones, we've completed a 2,000-meter diamond drilling program last year. Those assays are done in South Africa, where we'll be getting our maiden JORC resource within the next 4 to 6 weeks, and that will be a huge milestone for us going forward. The project had quite a lot of work done on it before in terms of drilling and trenching, but there was no JORC resource, so it's a critical path delivery for us as we moved into that feasibility study stage. Equally important is the met test work that's also being undergone in parallel in Canada, and that met test work, as I mentioned before, will be concentrating on delivering the best possible end products, not just one type. It's likely to be 2 different streams, one which will be the smaller fines, which will be going through into that battery market, and the other will be the jumbo and large flakes, where we'll preserve the flake size within that concentrate in order that we'll be able to get those higher prices that we looked at on the previous slide as well. So both the JORC resource and the met test work, get ourselves a maiden JORC resource and get that met test work out, and then we'll be moving very quickly into scoping study and feasibility with a view to having a pre-feasibility study out by the end of this calendar year. Obviously, a lot of work going through that in the process. This is the work program for 2021, which I've just mentioned. The studies phase is our next big phase that we're going into. We'll be starting to show the market what the commercial outcomes of Orom-Cross look like. We talked about a very low operating cost before. We talked about obviously getting a very as high a weighted average selling price as we can with that mixture of jumbo and large flakes as well as the smaller flakes. And at the end of the day, the production quantity at Orom-Cross is going to be dictated by what the market can absorb and what we can sell into rather than what we can mine. And that's a very important factor, because at the end of the day, if we build the plant that can be scalable by adding extra parts to it in order to upscale from X to 2X to 3X and ultimately to 10X as the market requires more graphite, we will be able to build this in phases so that the capex to start off will be lower, and ultimately we'll be able to get a very strong return from Orom-Cross going forward. The rest is just appendix, so I won't go into too much detail, but I think that in conclusion, I'd like to say that Orom-Cross is a genuine graphite project of size and scale, of quality in terms of the product. It's in a safe location, and we have a very strong management team that is developing it quickly at the moment. We've just published results last week, which showed that we've got some very high grade graphite coming through in terms of the assays, which is great because it means we'll be able to mine that as low hanging fruit in the early stages of our production profile. But we're continuing to work this asset all the time. We're working with very good people in country, and I think it's fair to say that we've got a long way to go in terms of delivering strong news flow and a very good result for this project going forward. Thank you very much.